We're missing the loading spinner because in the auth reducer, I'm setting loading when we do start the login process, but I'm not setting it when we start the sign up process. Good thing is we can simply register a second case here, thanks to switch case statements falling through automatically, so we can group multiple cases and run the same code. And here we can also handle sign up start. So that should set loading to true. Another thing I'm not liking is that in auth component, we're setting this error to null when we handle the error. We call handle error when we click that button in the modal we open. Also, we have our subscription to our store, which we're not unsubscribing from. First of all, let's handle that subscription. The store sub, which is of type subscription. Let's set up the subscription here. This store sub is equal to, well, our subscription we create here. And then ng on destroy, if we have a store sub, which we should, so this check is kind of not required, we can unsubscribe here. So that's one thing. Now regarding the error handling, resetting the error here in the component and not doing it in the ngrx state is not really that great, because it means that our ngrx state is not in sync with the state in this component. ngrx should be the only source of truth, however, at least for all the state it manages. So kind of duplicating state management is something you should avoid. Therefore, let's add a new action, clear error or handle error, which also has that auth prefix, clear error, something like that. Let's create an object for that action. Clear error implements an action, has a read-only type, which is equal to clear error, so to this identifier. We need no constructor because no payload needs to be added, but I do want to add it here to this union type. And now we can handle it in the reducer. Here in the reducer, I add a new case, auth actions clear error, in which case I want to return the old state, but set the auth error to null, so that we have no error here in the ngrx state. And now we can dispatch this from inside the auth component instead of setting this error here. So here I will instead call this store dispatch auth actions, a new auth actions clear error, like that. And this is now the cleaner approach for handling this, because now the ngrx state and the local state are in sync. So now if I try logging in with wrong credentials again, we get an error, and I can still handle it, and it works as before, but now it's a bit cleaner. With that, we're almost done with managing all effects that are related to ngrx. The remaining pieces are that I also want to redirect when I do log out. I do redirect, but I do that with the help of my auth service, and that's not how I want to do it anymore. Instead of redirecting here in the logout function, the auth service, I want to do that with the help of my effects. And then we'll also have to find a solution for all the local storage management here. So first of all, let's add an effect for logging out that redirects us. And actually, we already have an effect here that redirects us. Currently, it's called auth success, but we can rename this. We can name it auth redirect, because that is really what we do in this effect. Now, we do react to the authenticate success action, but as I mentioned, you can react to multiple actions here. So we can also react to auth actions logout and call redirect there as well. This allows me to remove that here from auth service logout. In addition, I'm currently dispatching logout here from inside logout. Well, that is not really what I want to do. Instead, let's dispatch this from inside the component where we do trigger logout, and that would be our header component. So here, instead of calling this auth service logout, let's use this store dispatch, and now dispatch a new auth action, for which we need to import it first of all. So import everything as auth actions from the auth folder, store auth actions. And with that all imported into the header, here we can create a new logout action. Now we don't use the service for that. This also means that since we now skip the service, we are not removing that from local storage. But we already have the problem that we're not setting anything in local storage, which is, if you watch closely, why we always restart in unauthenticated mode. If I do log in and I reload, we're back unauthenticated because we're not storing anything in local storage, and therefore our auto login logic doesn't succeed because the parts where we would have accessed local storage here in handle authentication, we're not calling this anymore. Handle authentication was called from inside login and from inside sign up, but we're not using these methods anymore. Indeed, we can actually remove these methods here and our application will still work because we're not using them. Hence, now the goal will be to kind of transfer this existing logic for managing our user data in the local storage into the NGRX effects world as well. I want to manage my local storage and store the user data there and fetch it from there, from inside the NGRX effects as well, because I guess this would make sense. We have the rest in the effects as well. That means that we need a new action, and that's our auto login action. So I'll export a new constant here, auto login of auto login. And that, of course, also receives a new class now. So export a class, auto login, which implements action. And this needs no constructor, it has no payload, but it gets that auto login type here. And of course, I also want to add it here to my union type, auto login. Okay, so this is the first step. Now we have this action. Now we can react to that, but before we do anything with automatically logging in, let's first of all make sure we store user data in local storage with the help of our effects file. And for that, let's go back to the service. And you see that we did store data in local storage when we handled authentication. We cleared it when we logged out, and we read from it in auto login. Hence, here in the auth effects, we want to store data for logging in and for signing up. Now we do have that handle authentication function here, which we call as part of these effect chains. And therefore, we could write data to local storage here as well. So here we can now create a new user. For that, you need to import your user model here into the auth effects file. And that user takes, of course, the email, it takes the user ID, it takes the token, and it takes this expiration date we calculated. And then we can just call local storage, set item, and now let's see, what did I name it here? In the auth service, it was named user data. So essentially, we can just copy that line and move that into our effects. Now it's called in a function, but this function is part of our effects chain for both signing up and logging in. So this is part of the NGRX effects world now. I also want to clear that and remove that from local storage if we do log out. And for that, we can simply add a new effect here, auth logout, where we use this actions pipe and watch out for the auth actions logout type. And if that occurs, then I just want to tap and execute some code. So again, this will be an effect that doesn't dispatch anything. Hence we add effect with that object dispatch false because I won't dispatch anything. And inside of the tap function here, we can access local storage and basically run the same code as we're doing it in the auth service. There, I'm removing the user data. Now, what about auto login? Well, we can essentially copy that entire code. And then we'll need to adjust it a little bit. Move it into auth effects here. And add a new effect, auto login. Where we filter out actions, auth actions of type auto login. And then, as a next step, if we have a look at the code I just copied, in the end what we do is we parse data from local storage, we create a user based on that, then we check if that user token is valid and so on, and if it is, we dispatch a new action to authenticate the user, otherwise we do nothing. Let's ignore the auto logout part for now. So in auth effects, we can add another tab call here, copy in that code, and let's go through it. We first of all retrieve data from local storage, we create a user based on that data, we check the validity of that token, and then here we're dispatching an action and we have that auto logout logic. Let's comment out the auto logout logic for the moment. And here, of course, I also don't want to dispatch. Instead, I want to return this as a new action, and then NGRX effects dispatches it for us. Hence, it's maybe better to not use tab, which will not return anything, but map instead. Map still allows us to parse all that data. And then here, I'm not calling this store dispatch, but I simply return this prepared action here. So that is all we need to do here. Now, to give this a try, of course, we have to make sure that auto login is actually dispatched. So let's go to our app component here, where I do call auto login on the auth service. And now instead of using the auth service here, I'm interested in using my store, which needs to be imported from NGRX store. And then I also need my app state. So from app, so from the root app reducer from the store folder, I get from app, which I then use here to assign this app state as a type for the store we're injecting. And here, instead of calling this auth service, we call this store dispatch. And then we need access to our auth actions. So import as from as auth actions from /auth store auth actions. Let's use a new auth actions auto login action here, and we should be good. Let's save that and let's wait for the app to reload. And I'm getting an error that I dispatched an invalid action undefined. That is stemming from auth effects. There in auto login, I am returning a new action, but only if we have a valid token. Otherwise, I don't. So let's return something outside of that if statement 2. That can be an object which simply needs to have a type property because that qualifies a valid action. You don't need to create it based on a class. If you need a simple action, you can do it on the fly with the object literal with the type property and give it any dummy identifier, like dummy here, anything like that. Now this is a valid action which simply has no effect. And then we also need to do the same up here where I return nothing thus far, also return dummy here. And with that, if we go back, now this works. Now let's try logging in here. We can check the application tab and there, local storage to see if something was stored. That is looking good. Let's now reload the app and auto login also seems to work. Otherwise we wouldn't end up here. If I log out and I then reload, I'm back here. So then we really cleared that. So this is all working. The missing piece is that auto logout so that we clear the token from local storage automatically and that we log out the user once our token expired.